Pricing of medicines is quite extraordinary. So, I mean, it's actually the best example of value-based price, of this confusion of price with value. So when, in some recent months, the price of an antibiotic went up by 400%, the CEO of the company, I think they were Nostrum Pharmaceuticals, was asked, what are you doing? How can you increase the price of a medicine by 400% overnight? And the answer was, we have the moral imperative to allow prices to rise to what the market will bear. So, you know, how much people are willing to pay. And of course, you are going to be willing to pay very much if you need it in order to survive. And what was interesting was not only that, you know, that moral imperative to the shareholders, which I've already mentioned, but also underlying that is this notion of value-based pricing, which is a real kind of deformation of the word value. Let me just, sorry, the problem with things like this when they have to wait is that then I can't get to the next slide quickly. This notion of value-based pricing, what's interesting is that it again dismisses this much more collective. Notice that I keep coming back to this point of value having been created collectively. In this particular sector, what's extraordinary is that every year in this country, the US government spends over 30 billion, anywhere between 30 and 38 billion on drug research, and the fact that the prices of drugs don't reflect at all that collective, right? This isn't saying that Big Pharma doesn't invest, of course they do, but that collective value creation is not in the price itself, and that you need welfare states around the world to bring down the price, but the pre-distribution price doesn't reflect that value creation, is again very interesting in the way that there's this kind of absence of looking at, well, who's actually doing what across that value chain. What's also interesting is, you know, this big debate now about the tech companies. What do we do about them? You know, issues around privacy, issues around taxation. Just this week, we heard that Amazon pays 0 taxes in the US. You know, one of the, you know, interesting things is I think it's been fueled by this idea. Remember the quotes I had at the beginning, the stories about value creation, that wealth is created in places like Silicon Valley. It then gets redistributed to other parts of the world, so to consumers in all sorts of different ways, without actually, again, debunking the notion of, in that case, where has wealth come from? Are we simply going to react to problems along the way like privacy or taxing that wealth, or could we actually redesign the system itself, which better reflected, in this case, let's call it digital capitalism, platform capitalism, this collective value creation process. So if you think about it, the technology that's used by the Ubers and the Googles, you know, internet, GPS was funded by the state. The citizens themselves are constantly creating data. Every time you click on an app, you're creating data. Why is it that we've accepted that that data, which again is retrieved with collectively funded technology, and citizens themselves are creating the data? Why does it just go into companies and then we worry about the fact afterwards? So there's a nice experiment happening in Barcelona and actually other cities across the world, also in Amsterdam, which in some ways go to the core of kind of rethinking the value proposition behind platform capitalism.